What are the best day one decks for Miss Marvel in Marvel Snap, and should you buy the season pass for Miss Marvel? In this video, those are the topics we're going to discuss. We're going to look at least 5 decks that you could put her in. I think she's going to be a lot stronger than what people think. Season pass, I'll answer that right now. You always buy the season pass if you have any money you're going to spend in this game. The card being good is a secondary benefit for the season pass. Should you buy it for that? We'll answer that at the end. And at the end, we'll add some keys to factor in for Miss Marvel. So let's jump in. First thing, we've got to talk about the card. It is a 4-cost, 5-power card. It is ongoing, and adjacent locations where you have cards with unique costs have +5 power. Now let's focus in on the unique cost. What that means is if you have 2 1-cost cards in the same location next to Miss Marvel, it will not get that buff. If you have a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, those are considered unique. You haven't doubled up any of the particular costs of those cards. Another factor to remember is if you use cost reducing cards like Zabu or Quinjet or Loki, Sarah, etc., then you've got to remember it's going to pull based off of the base cost of that card, not the paid cost or whatever you use to play that card. So if you've got a let's say you use Zabu and then you've got a White Queen, which you use at 3, it's still considered a 4-cost card. So this is going to mean that you're going to want to play Miss Marvel in the center location whenever possible. At least that's the optimal spot. That also means there's some potential easy counters there, which we'll get to at the end. So now let's dive into a few decks. As I'm diving into these, I want to give a giant shout out again to Marvel Snap Zone. I use their deck builder tool. It is fantastic. It's easy to find cards, and it makes it so I can quickly put together these decks and analyze them. The first one I've got up here, and by the way, all of these decks are linked in the description below if you want to try any of them out. I'm calling it Marvel and Friends SUPA Mid. So the idea here is basically we're going to get a really strong mid, and again, we're going to look for unique card costs to be able to put on the sides, and you want your better, I guess, unique cost cards out there. I've got Wasp because, I mean, it's an easy card to play at 0. If you've got a spot open, why not put a point there? Nico, I just straight up love Nico. I think she brings a lot of versatility, so she's a good 1-cost card. Armor, 2 costs, decent return there. Mr. Fantastic, like I said, we're going for a super mid, so he's got some potential to give you some more points on the side. You'll see how we get that super mid if you haven't figured it out already in a second. Cosmo is going to be important to potentially protect your Miss Marvel or any ongoings that you're going to have middle from an Enchantress. You're going to see Enchantress all over the place. So bringing the dog to help protect that a little bit would be a giant high five. I've also added Hulkbuster here because it's a nice way to get 5 points and not put any risk for gaining the buff from Miss Marvel in a left or right location. I think it's just a good card to pair up with Miss Marvel. Because you've got a number of ongoings to be copied, I've got Mystique, which honestly, you can use Mystique to copy Miss Marvel, and it's not a bad option there at all. But remember, if you Cosmo mid to protect from Enchantress, then that's not going to work so well. Obviously, Miss Marvel is the highlight spotlight card of the day, so she's going to be in this deck. I've got Iron Lad in this one because I think he's just a card that really could gain benefits from anything in here. I mean, I guess Hulkbuster might be the worst game there, but the rest of them are all pretty solid. And then you've got Iron Man to potentially double things up. And then a Chavez to help make the deck more consistent. Onslaught. Onslaught is the part where the super mid comes in. If you got Mr. Fantastic, Miss Marvel, and Onslaught mid, that's 7 times 2. So that's 14 plus points on each side. Or if you Miss Marvel mid, and then you Mystique mid, and then you still Onslaught after that, that's 20 points on the sides if you have any cards there. Any. Just put Wasp down and Nico down on each side to make sure that you can pull that off. 20 points on each side. That's a lot of points with literally no cards there. And you can easily get that done. So I like that a lot. Now, I think there's some flexibility with some other routes here, but that's how you get the super mid if you really want to go that route. Some alternate cards you might want to think about here. If you want to take out Mystique because you think she's a little too clunky, I wouldn't. But if you're thinking about it, that's maybe one you want to take out. Maybe even Armor or Nico or Hulkbuster. If you want to put in, I actually really thought about Gladiator. I know a lot of people don't like that card. And typically you want to have Gladiator with Shang-Chi, so you might want to try to find a way to get Gladiator and Shang in there. But that's a good situation where you can just put 2 cards in one lane with a 3 Gladiator and a 4 Shang to be able to potentially win and control that lane. It's a thought, but again, you can only put him in once he's released. I even thought about Shauna a little bit. If you're not going to have any ones, maybe you take out Nico and you put Shauna, because Shauna's just going to put ones in those side lanes, and it's like, okay, cool. The bad part about that would be is if you Shauna mid and she also puts, or even if you don't put her mid and she puts an Ebony Maw mid, that's a problem. So you might want to save that for maybe a late play if you put Shauna, but I was like, Shauna's not a bad option there because there's literally no ones that are going to hurt you. But that would be a fallback if you're not getting a good card late. And then just general good cards that you might want with, I don't know, a Nebula, again, Zabu to maybe make some of the Fords cheaper. I thought about Maw for a second, but I was like, it's a little risky. So, or even Forge. But this is the first one I wanted to show. Jumping over to the second one that I wanted to show you guys, Marvel Hawk. Now, this one could be a little clunky, I'll admit up front, but I wanted to see if I could get something to work here. It's really about seeing if you could get that Darkhawk mix going. I think there's definitely the potential to get it going. Anybody who's played Darkhawk's going to be familiar. You've got your Korg, you got your Black Widow, you got your Rock Slide, absolutely. You got your Absorbing Man to try to double up on any of those on-reveal effects. And then you've got your Darkhawk to be able to play out there so that you can get, hopefully, a ton of points from Darkhawk. Iron Lad, I think, can copy basically any card in this entire deck and be fantastic. I think it's a good setup. You've got Miss Marvel, obviously, to drop in mid. Mr. Fantastic, right now, I'm just keeping them in here because I'm, again, playing with Onslaught. You can Onslaught with Darkhawk, and it'd be phenomenal. I'm like, that's still a pretty good deal. If, like, maybe you don't get your Miss Marvel line going, this Darkhawk line going could be pretty solid. And then you finish up with an Onslaught, depending where you want to put it. I think it could be pretty good. Don't want to say this is going to be insanely good, but it could be pretty solid. If you want to take something out, maybe Mr. Fantastic, maybe Black Widow. I thought about Ravana a little bit. I thought about Mystique again a little bit. I think Mystique is the card that you really potentially want to have in all these with that Miss Marvel Mystique Onslaught combo. It just gets redunculous. So I would maybe think about switching something in there. And again, if I'm going to take something out, I mean, maybe it's Nico. I don't know. You decide there, but that combination, try to play it, try to love it. Next up, we've got Marvel Dino Collect. This is going to lean into your collector Loki aspects. I left Devil Dino in this one. I debated maybe taking him out and saying, do you want to go another route on this? But it's like, you know what? Let's just roll with it for the time being. We could have some 5s in there. With Loki, it does sort of make it so that late game, you've got to remember what you're doing. Again, we've got Quinjet and Loki in this. So remember, you might have a situation where a card is 2 less, so you've got to really factor in what the base cost of the cards are wherever you play them to still gain that Miss Marvel buff. I'm clearly in love with Nico, so I have her in this deck as well. Snow Guard is just a great card to buff up with Collector and Loki. Quinjet we mentioned. Zabu to try to get that Iron Lad and Miss Marvel and Loki a little bit cheaper. That card is potential replacement. Agent Coulson, again, to draw cards anytime you've got something out there potentially be replaced with Loki. You don't expect to necessarily play those. I had another 3 in here with Cable. I normally don't love Cable, but I was kind of like, you know what? I was looking for a unique card cost in that 3 range, and Cable helps with the Loki and Devil Dino. So I was like, you know what? Let's go ahead and go with Cable here. Iron Lad, again, just a great card to potentially dupe up another one in case you don't get either your Loki or your Miss Marvel going. Miss Marvel is a spotlight card of the day. Loki we mentioned, just still a phenomenal, great card. Devil Dino is whoa, almost fell off the chair there. Devil Dino is another route that you could potentially go. I typically don't love Devil Dino in the Loki decks, but it is an option. And then America Chavez just to thin things out or to make things more consistent. I told myself I wouldn't say thin out anymore with her. The outs I would look at here, taking cards out, and maybe a Coulson, Iron Lad, Devil Dino. If you stay with the Devil Dino, maybe Moon Girl could come in or Sentinel. So those are the type of things you want to think about one way or another. Moon Girl and Sentinel also work without the Devil Dino with Loki because you're going to want to copy as many cards as possible. Okay, so next up, we've got one where I was just trying to think of archetypes. What archetypes out there can Miss Marvel fit into? I thought about Destroy. I was like, well, I mean, you've got so many Destroy cards. You're losing the 5 on the sides. Not sure I'm going to really want to destroy her. Negative was terrible. Absolutely hated it. So then I was like, what about Discard? So we're going to try a discard here. So that's the general concept here, but it's with Miss Marvel. We've got Blade, we've got Morbius, we've got Daken, because again, we want to have unique costs as much as possible. We've got Sif, Ghost Rider, and Black Cat in case something, you know, you get Black Cat early, you want to play down your Ghost Rider. But remember there is if you do that, it means you're going to want to play it mid, because that means the +5 with Miss Marvel won't work there. You play that mid so that you can potentially have a good solid score there, because you know you're going to want to play your Miss Marvel there. Obviously Dracula, you've got your MODOK and APOC to be able to get those cards going, and the Dracula to get the APOC late in game, America Chavez to be more consistent. So when I'm looking at Daken, you really want to get either Blade and or MODOK paired up with that. So you're going to have to think about that. Lady Sif is purely in there for the APOC, but in case you don't have APOC in hand, maybe you've got MODOK. That's another reason why Ghost Rider is there for you. And then in that situation, you don't have to stress about playing Ghost Rider and Black Cat mid. Okay, that's fine. No big deal. That's it. I mean, it's not a lot more complicated than that. Obviously, Morbius helps you get the points from the discards. I think there might be something here, and I like the fact that Miss Marvel can give you some potential addition points on the sides. It's not a great situation, but I think it's something that's like, well, this is a discard that I could actually play that could be very helpful. It started making me think about Hela a little bit, but the RNG with Hela, I was like, nah, I don't want to play with that. Cards you might want to take out of this, Zabu. Just not a ton of 4s. Daken, maybe it's too hard to get that Muramasa shard discarded and you don't want to mess with it. I get it. I thought about Black Knight, but if you're going to do that, you have to take out Daken. So maybe you go into the Black Knight Infinite Colleen Wing route. You could potentially do that if you want to try to do a discard with Miss Marvel, and I think it could work okay. By the way, I'm sick, so if you can tell I'm a little bit like congested, everything, you can feel bad and maybe hammer down that like button if you've made it this far in the video. Very much appreciate that. All right, so last but not least is probably my favorite deck in the entire list of decks. It's Marvel Spectrum. Now, part of me has really been loving the Spectrum buff as is. So I was sitting here, and shout out to Glazer, because I was talking to him a little bit about the Darkhawk deck, and he just mentioned, you know, like, well, what if you did it, and you know, it seems like it's an ongoing, and I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, let's lean into ongoing here, and let's add Spectrum to this. This could be a lot of fun. So that's where I came up with this. I was like, all right, well, Ant-Man clearly, Zabu to try to get some 4s cheaper, because you've got Super Skrull, Man-Thing, Wong, and Miss Marvel in this. It's a lot of 4s that you want to try to get cheap. Luke Cage and Lizard, they're both good 2-cost cards. 2-5 on Lizard, the Luke Cage making it so that it's not able to go down. Again, Mystique after Miss Marvel with Onslaught by itself is a great 3-card play. It's just great. Cosmo, again, I want to potentially protect against that Enchantress, so I'm maybe playing that mid, but that means I can't play my Mystique mid. So you've got to think about that a little bit, about which path you want to go. And sometimes when I have that Cosmo in something like this with Spectrum, I get a little winky, washy, wonky, whatever the word is. Like I said, I'm a little sick. My brain doesn't function right most of the time, let alone when I'm sick. Super Skrull, I picked him because I think there's going to be a lot of ongoings lately. Mr. Fantastic's a potential better alternative in here, but I think the risk reward versus Super Skrull is probably going to be worth it. So for the time being, I wanted Super Skrull in this. I liked Man-Thing because if people are trying to diversify what their unique costs are, maybe we still have some Elsa decks out there. I want Man-Thing, right? And I'm already got Luke Cage in this deck, so why not Man-Thing? Wong, also a great combination to have with Mystique to potentially get that Spectrum on in a lane by itself. You could Wong, Mystique, and then save Spectrum for 6. Phenomenal. I think that's a great play. Obviously, Miss Marvel, again, is the spotlight card of the video, the week, etc. Onslaught, again, it's just a great card to play on top of that potential super mid type situation with Miss Marvel. And then Spectrum to get the on reveals for your ongoing cards. I think this deck could actually put out a lot of points and could be a lot of fun. This is the one that I'm absolutely going to play first, see how it goes. The ones that I potentially take out of this, maybe Super Skrull, Lizard, Man-Thing, and maybe you want to look into putting Mr. Fantastic, again, super mid, Iron Man, Blue Marvel, Echo even maybe to protect against an else doing something like that mid. Invisible Woman, another option to hide what you're potentially doing. All of these things I think could be phenomenal. So now let's jump to biggest keys and wrap up. So it goes without saying, it's in the card description, but you've got to spread out your unique cards. You want your Miss Marvel mid because that way you can optimize the +5s on the side. If you got her left or right, then you're only gaining +5 versus +5, a total of 10. So I would look at that. So you've got to protect her though with that mid location because a lot of people are going to be expecting it. That means rogues, that means enchantresses. So you're going to want to potentially have Cosmos in almost every deck that you're going to be looking to have Miss Marvel. But remember, that keeps you from also doing the Miss Marvel Mystique Onslaught combination as well. But you know what? It just depends what you get, right? So you've got to decide the risk you want to go there. Maybe in a conquest battle, you figure out somebody doesn't have one of those cards and you don't have to stress about it and you can lean into your heavy plays later, but maybe you protect with Cosmo to start. So we'll see how this starts going now. If Miss Marvel starts showing to be really good, that's going to mean Echo is going to start showing. Now, not a lot of people have Echo. Not a lot of people even remember Echo's in the game because she literally never gets played. But if Miss Marvel starts doing well, Echo is going to get dropped mid almost every single game. That starts happening and you really want to play Miss Marvel because you like her. That means you need to start thinking about a Killmonger and what can help you with Killmongers. Maybe there's a Nova you want to throw in your deck as well to maybe get a couple additional points, but Killmonger is a card that you're going to want to consider if Echo is out there a lot. So those are the decks I think that are going to be good for day one. Should you buy the season pass for Miss Marvel? I actually think she might be a good enough card where I'd consider it. But again, season pass is phenomenal by itself. The card being good is just an added bonus. I think Miss Marvel is going to be a little bit better when I thought with some of these potentials because the +5 are great. But we will see. There are some pretty easy counters there, so time will tell. Let me know what your thoughts are on how good you think she'll be in the comments below. I'm personally pretty excited to see how she goes. I'm excited to check out the movie. I know that anytime Brie Larson is in any movie, there's a lot of hatred out there. Whatever. I like Marvel. I think it's fun. Loki right now, giant thumbs up, no spoilers. Come to the Discord. It's linked in the description below. We have a spoilers channel if you want to chat about there. If you want to further support the channel, again, just hammer down that like button, subscribe. Appreciate it. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.